The transport ship broke through the atmosphere of the station, and Tae-min pressed his face against the viewport. He had seen many things in his 30 years. Fought in conflicts across 3 continents. Survived situations that should have killed him. But this was different. This was first contact with an entire galactic civilization. "Stop acting like a tourist," Nari said from the seat beside him, though her own eyes were glued to the window. Outside, the massive station orbited a purple and gold gas giant. Ships of impossible designs docked at ports that stretched for kilometers. Beings of shapes and sizes beyond imagination moved through transparent corridors. He-jin floated over to them, still not used to the zero gravity of the transport. "The medical data I received is fascinating. Most of these species have bone density a fraction of ours. Their muscle composition is completely different. And their home planets average 0.6 standard gravity." 0.6? Tae-min raised an eyebrow. "That's barely over half of Earth's gravity." "Exactly," He-jin smiled. "We're going to be very interesting to them." The docking process took an hour. When the airlock finally opened, they were greeted by a delegation of beings that looked like they were made of glass and light. They moved with a grace that seemed almost like dancing, their bodies thin and delicate. "Welcome, humans of Earth," the lead being said. Its voice came through a translator device. "I am Ambassador Keleth of the Velthari. We are honored to welcome you to the Coalition." Nari stepped forward, offering the traditional Earth handshake she had practiced. Keleth looked at her extended hand with curiosity, then gently touched it with 3 long fingers. Nari had to be careful not to grip too hard. "Thank you for inviting us to the Grand Athletic Games," Nari said. "We're eager to participate and learn about your culture." Keleth's expression was hard to read on such an alien face. But something seemed amused. "Yes, the games. They are the heart of our civilization. For 10,000 years, we have settled our disputes and celebrated our unity through athletic competition. Violence is unnecessary when we can compete in grace and skill." They were led through corridors that seemed designed for beings much lighter than humans. Tae-min had to duck under several doorways. The gravity was noticeably lighter, making each step feel bouncy and strange. Ji-ho, the youngest of their team at 23, was grinning like a child. "This is amazing. I feel like I could jump over a building." "Probably could," muttered Sang-woo, who was walking with exaggerated care, trying not to accidentally leap with each step. The briefing room was a large space with a holographic display in the center. Dozens of alien species were represented on screens around the room. Keyleth gestured for the humans to sit on cushions that immediately felt too soft and small. "The games consist of many events," Keleth explained. "Endurance running, obstacle courses, grappling contests, team survival challenges, and tests of coordination. Each species competes in their natural state, as our founders intended. It is a celebration of diversity." He-jin was studying a data pad that listed the events. She looked up at Tae-min, and something unspoken passed between them. He nodded slightly. "When do the games begin?" Tae-min asked. "In 3 cycles. That gives you time to acclimate to our standard competition gravity of 0.6 g. I understand Earth's gravity is heavier. You must be exhausted from carrying such weight your entire lives." Keleth's tone was sympathetic, almost pitying. Nari opened her mouth to respond. But Tae-min touched her arm gently. "We'll manage," he said simply. Over the next 3 days, the human team explored the station and watched preliminary events. They saw the Velthari run obstacle courses with elegant precision, their light bodies flowing over barriers like water. They watched the thorax, beings of living crystal, grapple with careful technique that emphasized leverage over strength. They observed the Quarin, amphibious creatures, navigate water challenges with natural ease. Every species moved with grace and control. Every competition was met with polite applause. Everything was civilized, measured, careful. "They treat this like art," Sang-woo observed one evening. "Like a performance. Because for them it is," He-jin said. She had been reviewing the medical data of the other species. Look at this. The Velthari have hollow bones. Like earthbirds, the thorax are incredibly brittle despite appearing solid. The Quarren can barely function in gravity above 0.7. These species evolved on gentle worlds. When? Misun, who had been quiet most of the trip, finally spoke. They've never had to fight for survival. Not really. Their worlds are kind to them. Taemin looked at his team. Sang Woo, who had run marathons in Earth's punishing gravity. Misun, who had carried injured climbers down mountains in storms. Dong Hyun, who had walked into burning buildings to save lives. Hyunsik, who had worked farms in heat and cold that would hospitalize most of these aliens. Ji-ho, who had grown up in a world where a simple fall could break bones. We need to be careful, he said quietly. They don't understand what Earth made us. We don't want to hurt anyone. Or scare them, Nari added. But Ji-ho was looking at the event schedule with a spark in his eye. Do you realize what this means? We've been training our entire lives in double their gravity. Every step we've ever taken, every object we've ever lifted, every time we've stood up or sat down or climbed stairs, we've been training. The night before the first event, Taemin couldn't sleep. He floated to an observation deck and looked down at the gas giant below. Somewhere beyond that, beyond the vast distances of space, was Earth. Beautiful, deadly Earth, with its crushing gravity and violent weather and dangerous life. He thought about humanity's journey to the stars. They had clawed their way up from a planet that tried to kill them every single day. They had survived ice ages and plagues and predators and disasters. They had endured. Keleth appeared beside him, moving with that characteristic Velthari grace. Nervous about tomorrow? A little, Taemin admitted. The marathon is our most prestigious event. The Velthari have won it for the past 100 cycles. It will be interesting to see how your species performs in proper, civilized gravity. Without Earth's oppressive weight holding you down, you might surprise yourselves. Taemin smiled in the darkness. Yes, he said softly. We might. He didn't mention that humans had been surprising themselves for their entire existence. The starting line of the marathon stretched across a platform that overlooked the station's agricultural sector. 50 competitors from 12 species stood ready, their bodies ranging from the delicate Velthari to the crystalline thorax to the fluid Quarren. The humans stood among them, and already Taemin could hear the whispers. They look so heavy, one alien murmured. Their bones must be incredibly dense, another observed. Poor things, evolved under such oppressive conditions. Sang-woo stretched his legs, and the motion made several nearby competitors step back nervously. He wasn't doing anything aggressive, just a simple hamstring stretch. But his muscles moved under his skin in ways the aliens found disturbing. Misun checked her equipment one final time. She wore standard running gear, lightweight by Earth standards, but she had noticed the stairs. The other species wore elaborate support systems, pressure suits, and breathing apparatus. The humans wore shorts and shirts. Do you need gravity assistance? A thorax official asked, approaching with a concerned expression. We have compensators for species from high-gravity worlds. We're good, Misun said with a smile. The official looked doubtful but moved away. The course stretched for 42 kilometers through varied terrain. It wound through the agricultural domes, across maintenance tunnels, up vertical climbing sections, through water obstacles, and finally to the finish line, at the station's central plaza. The designers had created what they considered the ultimate test of endurance. Keleth stood at the starting podium, addressing the crowd. The marathon is our oldest and most honored tradition. It tests not just speed, but endurance, navigation, and the ability to overcome obstacles. May all competitors honor their worlds with grace and skill. The starting signal sounded. A low musical tone that vibrated through the platform. The aliens began their race with measured precision. They moved efficiently, conserving energy, pacing themselves for the long distance ahead. This was a civilization that had perfected the art of endurance over thousands of years. The humans started moving, and everything changed. Sang-woo took his first real stride in the .6 gravity, and he launched forward like he had springs in his legs. He didn't mean to. It just happened. His body, trained for twice this gravity his entire life, suddenly had power it didn't know what to do with. Mi-sun was beside him, and she was laughing. Actually, laughing as she ran. Each step sent her bounding forward in a way that felt like flying. The obstacles that the other species carefully navigated, she simply leaped over. Behind them, Dong-hyun was running at what he considered a comfortable pace. For him, this was a light jog, the kind of thing he did to warm up. But he was passing aliens who were clearly giving their maximum effort. In the observation center, Hee-jin watched the race feeds with growing excitement. Look at their heart rates. Sang-woo is at 65 beats per minute. 65. He's barely working. Nari stood beside her, watching the diplomatic channels light up with confused messages. The other delegations are asking if we're using enhancement technology. Nari. We are, Hee-jin said with a grin. It's called Earth. On the course, the humans had already reached the first major obstacle, a climbing wall that stretched 15 meters high. The other competitors were using ropes and assistance devices, carefully making their way up. Sang-woo looked at the wall, judged the distance, and jumped. In Earth's gravity, it would have been impossible. Here, he cleared 6 meters in a single leap, caught a handhold, and pulled himself up with ease. His arms, built to lift his weight in 1G, barely strained in .6. Mi-sun went up the wall like a spider, her fingers finding holds, and her legs pushing her upward with ridiculous ease. She reached the top before most of the aliens had reached the halfway point. A Velthari competitor watched this display with something that might have been horror. How are they doing that? She gasped. Dong-hyun, bringing up the rear of the human group, paused when he heard a cry for help. A Quarren competitor had fallen during the climb and was injured at the base of the wall. Without hesitation, Dong-hyun changed course. You okay? He asked, kneeling beside the amphibious being. My leg, the Quarren gasped. I cannot continue. Dong-hyun assessed the injury quickly. He had medical training from his years as a firefighter. The leg wasn't broken, but the Quarren couldn't walk on it. He looked at the alien, then at the course ahead, then made a decision that would become legendary. I'll carry you, he said simply. Carry? No, you cannot. I weigh 47 kilograms. The course is still 30 kilometers. You will exhaust yourself. Dong-hyun gently picked up the Quarren, cradling the alien against his chest. In Earth's gravity, 47 kilograms was a decent weight. Here, it felt like carrying a large pillow. Let's get you to the medical station, he said, and started running. The Quarren's protests died as Dong-hyun settled into an easy stride. He wasn't running at full speed anymore, but he was still moving faster than many of the competitors, and he was doing it while carrying another being. How is this possible? The Quarren whispered. Physical therapy, Dong-hyun said cheerfully. I carried people heavier than you, up 10 flights of stairs in full gear back home. This is actually kind of nice. At the front of the race, Sang-woo and Mi-sun had settled into what they thought was a reasonable pace. They had pulled so far ahead that they couldn't even see the other competitors anymore. The course twisted through agricultural domes, and they ran side by side, barely breathing hard. Should we slow down? Mi-sun asked. Probably, Sang-woo agreed. But I don't want to be insulting. What if they think we're not taking this seriously? We could just enjoy it? Yeah, okay. They ran through sections designed to test endurance, long straightaways where the thin air was supposed to tax the lungs. For humans who had evolved breathing Earth's thick, oxygen-rich atmosphere, it was like running on a perfect spring day. They navigated water obstacles by simply wading through them, their dense bones keeping them stable in currents that knocked over other species. They crossed rope bridges without slowing down, their balance honed by a lifetime of fighting Earth's stronger gravity. In the observation center, the alien delegations were silent. On the screens, Sang-woo and Mi-sun were approaching the finish line. The next closest competitor was 8 kilometers behind them, and Dong-hyun was visible on another feed, still carrying the injured Quarren, having a pleasant conversation as he ran. Kelleth stared at the feeds. "What are they?" the ambassador whispered. Hae-jin, overhearing, answered quietly. Sang-woo and Mi-sun crossed the finish line together, barely sweating. They had completed the marathon in a time that shattered every existing record by almost an hour. The crowd was completely silent. Then Dong-hyun appeared, still carrying the Quarren, still barely winded. He carefully handed the alien to medical personnel, made sure they would be okay, then looked around at the stunned faces. "Did I miss the finish?" he asked innocently. The silence continued for another moment. Then, someone started clapping. It spread slowly, uncertainly, until the entire plaza erupted in applause. But it wasn't the polite, measured applause of before. It was the sound of an entire civilization realizing they had just met something they didn't understand. Something from a world that made monsters look gentle by comparison. Something called human. The Coalition Council Chamber was designed to inspire peace and contemplation. Soft lights, gentle music, comfortable seating for dozens of species. Right now, it felt more like a courtroom. Kelleth stood at the central podium, surrounded by representatives from across the galaxy. The ambassador's usual grace was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. "The humans must be disqualified," Kelleth said firmly. "They have an unfair advantage. Their performance in the marathon was not competition, it was domination. This violates the spirit of the games." Nari sat in the human delegation section, listening carefully. Beside her, Jin-woo remained calm. He was older than the rest of the team, with gray in his hair and scars that spoke of a long military career. He had been sent specifically for moments like this. "May I respond?" Jin-woo asked politely. The council leader, an ancient being from a species called the Architects, nodded slowly. "Please, representative of Earth, explain your species' abilities." Jin-woo stood and walked to the center of the chamber. He moved carefully, aware that every step demonstrated the very thing they were debating. His muscles moved efficiently, his balance was perfect, his posture spoke of strength these beings couldn't imagine. The Coalition Charter. Article 7, Paragraph 3, Jin-woo began. "All species shall compete in their natural state, without technological enhancement, as they have evolved. This is the foundation of the games." "Yes," Kelleth interrupted, "and you clearly violate this by existing?" Jin-woo's voice was gentle, but firm. "We did not choose our homeworld. We did not choose Earth's gravity, or its atmosphere, or its conditions. We simply evolved there. We adapted. We survived. He pulled up a holographic display. Earth appeared in the center of the chamber, rotating slowly. Numbers began to scroll beside it. "Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world by your own coalition standards. Gravity, 1 standard G, which is 0.4 higher than the coalition average. Atmospheric pressure, 0.9 to 7 standard atmospheres. Oxygen content, 21%, compared to the coalition average of 14%. 21. The numbers kept coming, each one making the aliens in the chamber shift uncomfortably. Tectonic activity. 7 major plates, in constant motion. Weather systems. Category 5. Hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, droughts, native predators, multiple species capable of hunting humans, microscopic life, billions of bacterial and viral species, many, lethal." Jin-woo paused, letting the information sink in. "Every human who stands before you today survived this. Not because we're special. Because on Earth, you adapt, or you die. There is no third option. A thorax representative spoke up. But surely your technology protected you? Your cities? Your medicine? Jinwoo smiled sadly. We developed that technology by surviving long enough to create it. For millions of years, humans had nothing but our bodies and our minds. We evolved to be persistence hunters. Do you know what that means? Silence greeted him. It means we're not the fastest, or the strongest, or the most dangerous predator on Earth. We're just the ones that never stop. We would chase prey for days, tracking it until it collapsed from exhaustion. We would follow migrating herds across continents. We survived ice ages by walking away from them. We are endurance incarnate. Heijin raised her hand, asking permission to speak. When granted, she stood beside Jin Woo. I've studied the physiology of every species present today. Would you like to know what makes humans different? She brought up comparative scans, human anatomy beside various alien species. Our bone density is 3 times the coalition average. Our muscle fiber is designed for power and endurance. Our cardiovascular system can sustain activity for hours without failure. Our sweat glands allow us to regulate heat in ways most of you cannot. We can survive temperature ranges that would kill 70% of the species in this room. This is exactly our point, Keleth said desperately. You are too different. Too dangerous. Dangerous? Taemin spoke for the first time. He had been sitting quietly, but now he stood. We finished the marathon and stopped to help an injured competitor. Donghyun carried a Quarren to safety. Where is the danger in that? He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of various species. You think we're dangerous because we're strong. But strength without control is just violence. Earth taught us strength. The military taught me control. Every human here knows how to be gentle, because we've spent our lives learning how not to break things. Hyun-sik rose from his seat. He was broad and solid, with the build of someone who had worked hard physical labor his entire life. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but clear. Tomorrow is the grappling tournament. I am entered to compete against the thorax champion, Corven. I know Corven is worried about facing me. I can see it. A large crystalline being in the chamber shifted. That was Corven. I promise you, Hyun-sik continued, that I will not hurt you. Not because I cannot, but because I choose not to. That is what Earth taught us. We could be monsters, perhaps, but we choose to be people. The chamber fell silent. The council leader looked at the assembled representatives, then at the humans, then at the data, still floating in the holographic display. The charter is clear, the ancient being said finally. All species compete as they are. The humans have not violated any rules. They are simply what they are. Keleth slumped in defeat. But another voice spoke up. It was a Velthari scientist. One who had been studying the human data. I have a question, the scientist said. Your world seems designed to kill you. How did you develop civilization? How did you create art and music and philosophy when you were constantly fighting for survival? Mi-sun stood this time. Because we had to. When every day might be your last, you learn to find beauty in small moments. We created art because we needed hope. We made music because we needed joy. We developed philosophy because we needed meaning. She smiled. Earth tried to kill us every day, so we learned to live harder than any other species needed to. Sang-woo added, the games, for you, are about grace and skill. For us, they're just life, running from danger, climbing to safety, carrying the injured, enduring through hardship. We've been playing survival games our entire evolution. The council leader raised a hand for silence. The humans will continue to compete, but I suggest we all watch carefully, not because they are dangerous, But because we might learn something about resilience, we have forgotten. As the session ended and beings filed out, Corvin approached Hyun-sik. The massive crystalline warrior looked down at the human, who was significantly smaller. "You truly will not try to break me?" Corvin asked. Hyun-sik smiled gently. "I truly will not. Tomorrow, we will test skill against skill, technique against technique. May the best grappler win." Corvin studied the human for a long moment. "I have trained for 100 cycles. I am the champion of my people. And I am terrified of you." "I know," Hyun-sik said. "Earth taught us to be terrifying. But it also taught us to be kind. Both are necessary." That night, the story spread across the coalition networks. Humanity. The species, from the impossible world. The Deathworlders. The ones who carried injured competitors while running marathons. The ones who promised gentleness, despite their strength. In the human quarters, Tae-min gathered his team. "Tomorrow, we show them that strength and honor can exist together. We compete hard, but we compete fair. We win if we can, but we respect our opponents. Understood?" Everyone nodded. "Good," Tae-min said. "Because the galaxy is watching, and we're going to show them what humanity really is." The grappling arena was a circular platform surrounded by cushioned barriers. Traditional coalition rules: pin your opponent for 3 seconds, or force a submission. No strikes, no weapons, pure technique and strength. It was considered the most elegant of all the game's events. Hyun-sik stood at the edge of the platform, wearing a simple white uniform. Across from him, Corvin waited. The thorax champion's crystalline body, reflecting the arena lights like a prism. The alien stood 2.5 meters tall, nearly a meter taller than Hyun-sik. Their body was composed of living crystal formations that had never broken in 100 cycles of competition. The crowd was larger than any previous event. Word had spread about the Deathworlders. Every species wanted to see what would happen when human strength met thorax durability. Keleth stood in the VIP section beside Jin-woo, unable to hide their concern. "Your fighter will injure himself trying to move, Corvin. The thorax are immovable." Jin-woo watched Hyun-sik with calm eyes. "Perhaps." The referee, a neutral species called the Observers, signaled the start of the match. Corvin moved first. Using a classical thorax technique, they advanced with perfect balance, arms extended to establish control. It was beautiful to watch, like watching a sculpture come to life. Hyun-sik didn't retreat. He stayed centered, weight distributed evenly, breathing steady. When Corvin's hands reached for him, Hyun-sik simply stood his ground. The thorax champion gripped Hyun-sik's shoulders and pushed. It was a standard opening move, designed to test an opponent's balance and strength. Corvin had used it to dominate opponents for a century. Hyun-sik didn't move. Corvin pushed harder, engaging more of their considerable mass. The crystalline being was incredibly dense, far heavier than any competitor Corvin had ever faced. Except this one. Hyun-sik still didn't move. In the observation area, Heejin was watching the bio readings. Hyun-sik's muscle engagement is at 40%. He's barely trying. On the platform, Corvin stepped back, visibly confused. They had never encountered an opponent who couldn't be moved. The thorax champion changed tactics, attempting a sweep to knock Hyun-sik's legs from under him. Hyun-sik shifted his weight with practiced ease, redirecting Corvin's momentum rather than resisting it. It was basic physics, taught in every Earth martial arts school. Use your opponent's force against them. The crowd gasped as Corvin stumbled. "Impossible," Keyleth whispered. "Thorax do not stumble." Hyun-sik reset his stance, still calm, still centered. He gestured respectfully for Corvin to continue. The match went on for 10 minutes. Corvin tried every technique in the thorax arsenal. Powerful grips, sweeping throws, crushing holds. Each time, Hyun-sik either stood immovable or redirected the force with minimal effort. It wasn't that Hyun-sik was winning. It was that he was teaching. Each exchange showed another principle of Earth martial arts. Balance over strength. Timing over speed. Technique over power. Finally, Corvin paused, breathing heavily. The thorax champion looked at Hyun-sik with something that might have been understanding. "You are not trying to defeat me," Corvin said. Hyun-sik nodded. "You are skilled, honored champion. But you have never faced someone from a high-gravity world. May I demonstrate?" Corvin hesitated, then nodded. What happened next took less than 3 seconds. Hyun-sik moved forward, found Corvin's center of balance, and applied a simple hip throw. He didn't use excessive force. He didn't need to. He simply redirected Corvin's mass, used gravity itself as a tool, and gently guided the thorax champion to the mat. Corvin lay pinned, not by strength, but by perfect technique and positioning. The referee counted to 3. The arena was silent. Hyun-sik released Corvin immediately and offered his hand to help the alien stand. "Thank you for the match, honored champion. You taught me much about thorax techniques." Corvin stood slowly, then did something unprecedented. The crystalline being bowed deeply, a gesture of ultimate respect in thorax culture. "I have been champion for 100 cycles," Corvin said. "Today, I met someone who could have broken me in seconds, but chose to teach me instead. This is true mastery." The crowd erupted in applause. But this time, it was different. It wasn't shock or fear. It was genuine appreciation. The next event was the Team Survival Challenge. This was considered the pinnacle of the games, a 48-hour test in a simulated hostile environment. The coalition had designed it based on data from their most dangerous worlds. Taemin's full team entered the simulation. Himself, Sang-woo, Mi-sun, Dong-hyun, So-ra, and Ji-ho. They stood at the entry point, looking at the environment readouts. Temperature variation: 15 to 35 degrees Celsius, Mi-sun read. Humidity: 40 to 80%. Simulated weather systems. Terrain: mixed forest and water features. Hazards: automated predator units. So-ra laughed. "So, basically a nice camping trip?" They entered the simulation while other teams were still deploying their equipment. The aliens brought portable shelters, environmental suits, defensive weapons, and enough supplies for a small army. The humans brought basic field gear and water bottles. "Are they insane?" a Velthari observer whispered. "They have no shelter, no protection." Heijin, monitoring from the control center, smiled. "Watch and learn." Inside the simulation, the humans moved through the environment with practiced ease. When the temperature dropped to 15 degrees, they simply put on light jackets. When it climbed to 35, they removed them. The humidity bothered them about as much as breathing. Ji-ho found a suitable campsite within 30 minutes. "Here," he said, pointing to a slight rise near a stream. "Good drainage, water source, defensible position." Without discussion, the team went to work. They had done this dozens of times on Earth, in training exercises and real emergencies. Mi-sun and So-ra gathered materials for shelter. Sang-woo and Dong-hyun built a fire pit. Taemin scouted the perimeter. Ji-ho began constructing tools from available resources. In less than an hour, they had a functional camp that would have taken the alien teams 6 hours with all their technology. "How did they do that so fast?" an observer asked in the control center. "Because Earth taught them," Heejin explained. "On their world, if you can't build shelter quickly, you die. If you can't start a fire in any condition, you die. If you can't find water and food, you die. These aren't special skills for them. This is just normal." The first night, a simulated storm hit. The alien teams hunkered down in their sealed shelters, waiting it out. The humans sat around their fire, which Ji-ho had designed to burn even in rain, and shared stories. The temperature dropped to 12 degrees. a monitor noted. They should be suffering from exposure. The humans were wearing light sweaters and looked perfectly comfortable. On the second day, the automated predator units activated. These were designed to simulate dangerous wildlife, with programming based on the most aggressive species in Coalition space. A predator unit approached the human camp, its sensors detecting heat signatures and movement. It was programmed to test the competitor's defensive capabilities and fear responses. Dong-hyun saw it first. He stood up slowly, made himself look larger, and shouted in a deep, commanding voice. It was an old Earth technique, used against everything from bears to mountain lions. The predator unit's sensors were confused. The programming couldn't interpret this behavior. The human wasn't fleeing or fighting. It was intimidating. The predator? The unit retreated to recalculate. Did that human just scare off the predator simulator? A technician asked, stunned. Yes, Heejin said. On Earth, sometimes the best defense is making the predator decide you're not worth the trouble. The humans completed their objectives efficiently. They mapped the terrain, identified resources, constructed shelter, procured food and water, and established a safe extraction point. They did it all in 31 hours. They spent the remaining 17 hours exploring. So-ra went swimming in a lake that the quarantine had deemed too turbulent. The current is nice, she called out. Refreshing. Mi-sun collected plant samples, cataloging them with the enthusiasm of a tourist. This would make excellent tea, she noted about one plant. Ji-ho, out of pure curiosity, disassembled one of the weather simulation units to see how it worked. Fascinating design, he commented, carefully putting it back together. Sang-woo found a high point and spent an hour doing sunrise yoga. Tae-min and Dong-hyun went on what they called a casual hike that covered 20 kilometers of terrain. In the control center, the observers watched in bewildered silence. They're not treating this like a survival challenge, Keyleth said quietly. They're treating it like a vacation. Kroops. No, Jinwoo corrected. They're treating it like Earth. And on Earth, this would be a vacation. The closing ceremony was scheduled in the Great Hall of the Coalition Station. Representatives from every species gathered. But the atmosphere was different from the opening. There was less celebration and more contemplation. The humans had won every major event, often without appearing to try hard. Tae-min stood with his team in the human section, feeling the weight of thousands of eyes. Not hostile eyes, but curious ones, confused ones, sometimes frightened ones. Keyleth approached them before the ceremony began. The Velthari ambassador moved slowly, gracefully, but with none of the confidence from their first meeting. I owe your species an apology, Keyleth said quietly. I tried to have you disqualified. I called you dangerous. I was afraid of what you represented. Jinwoo inclined his head respectfully. And now? Now I am still afraid, Keyleth admitted. But I understand better. You are not dangerous because you wish to be. You are dangerous because your world demanded it. There is a difference. There is, Jinwoo agreed. On Earth, we have a saying, the greatest strength is knowing when not to use it. The ceremony began with the traditional awarding of honors. Each human team member was called forward to receive medals in their respective events. The applause was genuine, but there was an undercurrent of something else. Uncertainty about what humanity's presence meant for the coalition. When all the awards had been given, the council leader rose to speak. The ancient being's voice carried through the hall without amplification. The games have existed for 10,000 years. They were created after a great war, when our species nearly destroyed each other. We chose competition over combat, grace over violence, cooperation over conquest. The games became our way of resolving differences without bloodshed. The council leader paused, looking directly at the human delegation. Today, we witnessed something we have never seen before. A species that has turned survival itself into strength. A species that treats our greatest challenges as ordinary tasks. A species that could dominate through power, but chooses to show restraint. Murmurs spread through the crowd. This raises a question we must all consider. Have we, in our pursuit of peace and grace, forgotten what it means to truly struggle? Have our gentle worlds made us weak? Keleth stood suddenly. With respect, honored leader, I must disagree. We are not weak. We are civilized. There is a difference. Is there? The council leader's voice was gentle but firm. Or have we simply been fortunate enough to never test that assumption? Heejin raised her hand, asking permission to speak. When granted, she stood and addressed the assembly. I've spent the past week studying all of your species. Your biology, your history, your worlds. And I've learned something important. You're not weak. You're adapted perfectly for your environments. The Velthari in high gravity would be just as disadvantaged as we are underwater compared to the Quarren. She brought up a holographic display showing comparative data. What Earth gave us wasn't superiority. It gave us adaptability. Because on Earth, conditions change constantly. Weather shifts from extreme heat to extreme cold in hours. Terrain varies from mountains to oceans to deserts within short distances. Predators and prey evolve together in an endless arms race. We didn't become strong because we wanted to. We became adaptable because nothing stays the same on Earth long enough to specialize. Misun stood beside her colleague. Heejin is right. You asked if your peaceful worlds made you weak. They didn't. They made you specialized, efficient, graceful. You mastered your environments perfectly. We never got to master ours. We just learned to survive whatever it threw at us. Sora added. And that's why we want to share what we've learned. Not because we think you're weak, but because adaptability is useful. Resilience is valuable. These aren't just survival traits, they're life traits. Taemin stood last. The council leader asked if you've forgotten what it means to struggle. Maybe you have. But that's not a weakness. That's a blessing. You built a civilization without the constant threat of death. You created art and culture without needing them to escape horror. You developed science from curiosity, not desperation. He looked around the hall, meeting eyes from dozens of species. Earth made us strong because it had to. Your worlds let you be peaceful because they could. Both are valid. Both have value. Maybe what we're supposed to learn from each other is balance. Jinwoo stepped forward. The coalition was built on the idea that different species working together are stronger than any one species alone. We'd like to propose an initiative, the Deathworld Resilience Program. A holographic document appeared in the center of the hall. Humanity will share its training methods, survival techniques, and adaptive strategies with any coalition species that wants to learn. Not to make you more dangerous, to make you more resilient, more adaptable, better prepared for the unexpected. He paused. And in return, we hope to learn from you. Your grace, your efficiency, your centuries of peaceful cooperation. Because while Earth taught us to survive, it didn't teach us how to live peacefully. We're still learning that. Nari stood and continued. We're proposing a cultural exchange program. Coalition species can visit Earth, experience our environment under controlled conditions, learn our methods, and humans will study with you, learning how to build the kind of lasting peace you've achieved. The hall was silent for a long moment. Then Corvin stood, the massive thorax champion's crystalline form catching the light. I accept, Corvin said simply. I wish to learn from the humans. Hyun-Sik showed me that there are techniques beyond what I have mastered. I would be honored to study on Earth. One by one, other species representatives stood. The Velthari, the Quarren, the Observers, dozens of others. Finally, Keleth rose. I was wrong about you. I thought you were conquerors. But you're teachers. You offer your strength without demanding submission. This is unprecedented. The council leader nodded slowly. Then, it is decided. The Deathworld Resilience Program is approved. Let this be the next evolution of the games. Not just competition, but true cooperation. Not just displaying our strengths, but sharing them. 3 months later, the first group of alien students arrived on Earth. They came prepared with gravity assistance suits, atmospheric filters, and emergency medical equipment. They were terrified and excited in equal measure. Sang Woo met them at the landing site, a training facility in the mountains. As the aliens disembarked, struggling with Earth's gravity, he moved among them with gentle efficiency, helping them adjust their equipment, offering encouragement. A young Velthari student named Liren took her first steps on Earth and immediately felt like she was being crushed. "How do you live like this?" she gasped. Sang-woo smiled and offered his hand for support. One day at a time. One step at a time. That's how everything on Earth survives. You don't fight the gravity. You adapt to it. You'll be surprised how quickly your body learns. In the training center, Taemin stood before the assembled students. Welcome to Earth. Over the next 6 months, we're going to teach you things that will be hard. Your bodies will ache. You'll want to quit. You'll wonder why you came here. He paused, looking at their frightened faces. But you'll also discover something amazing. You're stronger than you think, more resilient than you believe, more capable than you've ever had to prove. Earth will test you, but it will also show you what you're capable of becoming. Mi-sun was leading a group on their first hike. A gentle trail through a forest. The aliens moved slowly, struggling with the gravity, the oxygen-rich air making them dizzy. Every few meters, someone needed to rest. "I cannot do this," a Quarren student said, sitting heavily on a rock. Mi-sun sat beside them. "You know what the secret is? The secret isn't being able to do everything. It's being able to do one more step than you think you can. Then another. Then another. That's how humans climbed mountains and crossed oceans and survived ice ages. One impossible step at a time." The Quarren looked at her, then at the trail ahead, then stood shakily. One more step, one more step. High above Earth, in orbit, Jiho and So-ra watched the training feeds. They could see the struggles, the exhaustion, the moments of doubt. But they could also see something else: determination, growth. The first tiny seeds of adaptation, taking root. "Do you think they'll make it?" Jiho asked. So-ra smiled. "Remember what Taemin always says? Humans aren't special because we're strong. We're special because we never quit trying." These students chose to come here. They chose to push themselves. That's the first step. And the rest is just Earth being Earth. It'll test them, challenge them, push them to their limits. But it'll also teach them what we learned. That limits are just the beginning. That strength comes from struggle. That the weight you carry makes you stronger. Down on the surface, Hyun-sik was teaching a combat class. His students were learning basic defensive techniques, adapted for their various physiologies. A thorax student was struggling with a simple balance exercise. "I am too heavy," the student complained. "I cannot move quickly enough." End quote. "I cannot move quickly enough." Hyun-sik demonstrated the technique again, his movements fluid despite his own dense, Earth-evolved body. "You're not too heavy. You're perfectly weighted for what you are. The question isn't how to be lighter. It's how to use what you have. Weight isn't weakness. It's power. If you know how to use it." The student tried again. And this time, something clicked. The movement was still slow by human standards, but it was controlled, purposeful, strong. "Yes," Hyun-sik said quietly. "Like that. Now you're not fighting your nature. You're working with it." As the sun set on that first day of training, the alien students gathered in the dining hall, exhausted and aching. Liren, the young Velthari, could barely lift her utensils. How long before it gets easier? She asked Sangwoo. He smiled. Honestly? About 2 weeks before you notice any difference. 3 months before it feels normal. 6 months before you realize you've changed. And what will we be then? Sangwoo looked at the assembled students, seeing their exhaustion, but also their determination. You'll be what you always were. Velthari, Thorax, Quarren, and all the rest. But you'll also be something more. You'll be people who chose to carry the weight, who chose to adapt, who chose to become stronger not because you had to, but because you could. He raised his glass. Welcome to Earth, everyone. Welcome to the place that makes impossible things ordinary. Welcome to the Death World. Now let's show you what you're really capable of. The students raised their glasses in return. And in that moment, something shifted. They stopped being frightened visitors and became something else. Students, seekers, people who had chosen to test themselves against a world that had forged humanity itself. And somewhere in the cosmos, the galaxy watched and wondered. If these gentle species could adapt to Earth's challenges, what did that mean for the coalition? What possibilities had they overlooked by staying comfortable? The answer, as humanity had learned long ago, was simple. The weight you carry makes you stronger. And sometimes, choosing to carry more weight is the bravest decision of all.